I'd like to address the issue of access to transit and how important that is to the usage of transit within Pinellas County. As most of you are aware, the construction on US 19 has reduced the accessibility going one way or the other way. You can get off maybe in front of the door, but coming back, there's no way to cross what's equivalent of a divided highway. An example of that is McCormick Drive, where there's an office complex that is packed with cars in the parking lot. So many cars that they've had to build a deck there, and it would be a perfect use for public transit. Used to have an active public transit stop, but you can't get across the street. You would have to walk almost a mile north or south. The Florida Department of Transportation is in the process of collecting comments for a proposed expansion of the expressway going north on 19 north of 580. In that area, I currently see buses dropping off passengers, and they do cross 19 after waiting for a safe crossing. This issue was discussed at the May Forward Pinellas meeting, and distributed to you is the action sheet from that meeting and also the agenda item. Basically, their technical advisory committee recommended crossings every quarter mile, and I'm also attaching to that some resolutions that the PSTA board adopted back in 2007 requesting the designs of US 19 to be more transit accessible. Transit accessibility was a subject of a joint Forward Pinellas and DOT study, which recommended close coordination and future designs. So I'm just suggesting the PSTA may wish to reinforce the action taken at Forward Pinellas. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. No other cards. Can we approve the minutes of March 14th meeting? March 14th. Yeah.
Move approval.
Second, I guess. So it goes.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have information items, funding for transit investments. Cassandra.
Well, let me introduce Cassandra and just highlight why we are presenting this to you, the Planning Committee. What at your places are two handouts. The first one is called Tourist-Focused Transit Projects, and the Tourist Development Council of Pinellas County actually meets right now. Meets on Wednesdays when we have the Finance Committee and the Planning Committee. And so I was scheduled not to be here. And you had only gotten to hear the lovely Cassandra present this stuff. Because I was going to be at the Tourist Development Council with Whit Blanton, where he was going to present this list, these candidate projects to the council. The council then is chaired by the county commission chair each year, so it's Ken Welch is the chair of it, and he delayed Whit's presentation till June, so you won't see me at the June Planning Committee now. The other sheet is a list of, it's called Pinellas Rapid Transit Candidate Projects, sort of to respond to questions we've been getting about what are the future possible bus rapid transit or rapid transit projects that the Forward Pinellas and other our own plans have called for, and Cassandra's going to kind of walk you through both those things. Take it away.
Took all my stuff. No. So the two sheets, they do have different audiences because we have been getting a lot of questions about what would be the next projects after the Central Avenue BRT. So I want to make it clear that the Central Avenue BRT is on both of these, but it is considered a funded project in that the local funding, and we've applied and started to apply through the federal process for the remaining of that funding. So the two sheets that you see in front of you, one is based on what projects do we have in our community bus plan that we would consider for advancement and that would be tourism focused. These would be eligible for tourist development tax dollars as of July 1st based on the change in the legislature this spring. And they include some of the projects that we've been talking about for a while, including the Clearwater Beach to TIA Express, but also looking at our 300X in Mid-County and extending that to the beaches and taking that to the airport as well. Each of those we would propose to run service every 30 minutes, 5 a.m. to midnight to match up with the demand at the airport and have a very consistent trip to the beach. The other two, the one in North County would be taking the Jolly Trolley coastal route and taking it from a 60-minute service right now. So we've advanced it 7 days a week. We've advanced it to a one-seat ride to the beach. One of the service improvements that we could do for that project, for that service, would be to take it to 30 minutes. So the other Jolly Trolley routes on the beach are already 30 minutes. This would be for the North Coastal and serve both a tourist market and the local market. That would also require additional vehicles for the trolley fleet, and you see that in the capital on the back side. The last candidate project that we feel is tourism focused would be part of the regional transit feasibility plan. So in that conversation, there's a number of ways that we could fund the Pinellas portion of that project that's being discussed at the regional level, and feel that the tourism focus in downtown St. Pete is strong enough if we do take that to the airport over the Howard Franklin Bridge, that project could be funded by tourist development dollars. I will say that PSTA has already applied for a service development grant for that project, anticipating the answers coming out of the Regional Transit Feasibility Plan and understanding that the money that FDOT puts towards service development projects, they like to see a regional component. So there are a few of these, the two beach expresses, as well as the Regional Transit Feasibility portion in Pinellas could be eligible for service development grants quite easily. There's also for the Jolly Trolley, we would still consider the contributions of the current funding partners, which include Tarpon Springs, Dunedin, Pinellas County, and the Clearwater DDB. The other sheet is it. Yes.
Can I ask a couple questions on this first?
Yeah.
On the routes to the airport, both of them, the route along, I guess that's East Bay, and also
Almerton.
No, actually, I guess it's along Almerton.
Gulf to Bay and Almerton.
Yeah, and both of them are running all the way into downtown Tampa. Is that part of the original plan, or not turning them around at the airport?
So the proposal for the Clearwater Beach Express is to end it at the airport.
Mm-hmm.
For the mid-county beaches, we would take that to the airport and then on to downtown Tampa, following our current service on the 300X, improving the access to the activities in downtown Tampa.
Are there some interim stops planned for those two routes, or are they going to be strictly direct from the jump-on point to the airport and then in downtown Tampa?
For the Clearwater Beach Express, we've done the travel demand modeling for that corridor as part of our joint project on that corridor with Forward Pinellas. We'll be doing travel demand modeling on all of these, but for that route, we modeled 6 stops total from the beach to, including the beach, including the airport. There would be 4 interim stops, so at Rocky Point, 19, Belcher. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump in
Oh, no, that's okay.
No, but they would be very limited stop in order to achieve the speeds that people are requesting in making the trip end to end.
And then my other question is, on the Jolly Trolley coastal route upgrade, there's a $1.1 million expenditure for vehicles. Is that on us, or is that shared in some way with Jolly Trolley itself?
Well, we pay them the hourly rate.
Right.
But they did not anticipate buying additional vehicles, so we've put the total cost of what we think those vehicles would cost into this. Now, because it's still at the early stages, we don't have an answer about who would actually own those vehicles. So PSTA could own those vehicles and give them to the Jolly Trolley to operate, but we would buy the same type of vehicle that they're using.
Okay. All right.
Go ahead.
Has there been any thought about having Hart pick up the transit from the airport to downtown? I don't know if they're running more frequently from the airport to downtown versus us having 3 separate lines, all then going into downtown instead of terminating at the airport and allowing for a transfer.
I think we've mentioned it, but we've not had any substantive conversations about that. It is to our benefit to get to downtown Tampa in terms of having a 1-seat ride there. We happen to operate our current 300X and our 100X that go to the airport, and FDOT does support both of those routes because they are regional. So we actually do pay on those routes. We pay less than what the full cost is to operate those.
You know, I just from a tourist standpoint, for those that work here, I think the 300X, the 100X going into downtown Tampa makes sense, right? They're doing it because they want that direct ride in there. The tourists are a little bit more flexible in their schedule and just don't want to be driving, so it may be a potential option, especially on the expanded schedules, because these schedules are going to be running longer than you would expect for a normal business commuter into Tampa.
Right.
Okay, part of future conversations, I guess.
Well, and I had similar questions, except concern for the commuters that are, the thing that was expressed about going to the airport on the way to downtown, adding at least a half an hour to that. So have we, or do we plan to have direct routes to downtown in addition to the airport? Airport to downtown runs like during rush hours, perhaps?
So at this time, we don't have necessarily a plan to do both, like an A service and a B service, one that bypasses the airport. What we do anticipate in this, in terms of the travel times, is the implementation of the express lanes over the Howard Franklin Bridge, that we would be able to therefore use them and take that travel time savings and add and keep that stop at the airport without creating additional travel time impact to the riders.
But that's a couple years out.
It is a couple years out.
Well, it's all a couple of years out.
Everything's always.
Everything. Well,
A couple years
these
from now.
are all very long-term. Again, to do all of these is quite a lift.
No kidding.
And I don't think there's anyone in this room that has the expectation that the TDC would fund all of these projects from the get-go. I mean, so it's opening a dialogue with them about what projects we think would be available for tourists, what do we think we could provide, and then what do they think would be a good opportunity for them to start funding public transportation.
I mean, you all likely know or have some experience with the Tourist Development Council. Of course, since it meets once a month on Wednesdays, I've never been to a meeting before, neither has Whit Blanton. But the idea, at least in the way Commissioner Welch has sort of asked for the presentation to be made, is to sort of have a workshop to introduce this. This is new legislation that the state approved, allowing for tourist-oriented transportation to be funded with the bed tax. And so this listing candidate projects like this is what Commissioner Welch said. I showed him this, and he thought this was what he wanted. Probably, at least to start, it would just be one or the other routes to the airport. The Clearwater Beach Chamber of Commerce has not been overly supportive of the Clearwater Beach Express route from the beach to downtown, to the airport, for a host of different reasons. Some based on competition with some of their members, like Super Shuttle is a member of the Clearwater Beach Chamber. Others, some of the hotels along Clearwater Beach only want the bus to go to their hotel, right to their hotel and not to the other hotels, of course. So we've been kind of in an ongoing discussion with them. So the Ulmerton Road is sort of an alternative. If Clearwater Beach just doesn't want it, maybe we'd start with the Ulmerton Road. Just as a reminder, we are going to launch service to the airport starting in June. And we have, as you saw at the last board meeting, there has been concern about the existing commuters to downtown Tampa being delayed by that. So we compromised, and we are going to have one of the trips, the most crowded trip in the morning and the afternoon, be direct and not go to the airport. That will dilute an already limited service to the airport a little bit more, but we still think it can be, if it's properly marketed, it can be successful. We don't think it'll take, at least our schedulers and planners do not believe it will take a half hour or delay them by a half hour. Of course, we all know the Howard Franklin Bridge is very variable, how long it takes to get across. So I'm sure on some days it will take a half hour, and some days it'll take an hour, and some days it can maybe be done in a shorter period of time. Of course, we're going to adjust the schedules to the trips so that they still get to work on time, still get to work at the same time. Now, they'll just leave Pinellas County a little bit earlier.
And how many trips a day will we be doing?
It's about every hour in the morning and every hour in the afternoon, with one midday trip. I think that's probably how best to describe it. The 100X, which goes across the Gandy Bridge, is twice as good. It's every half hour in the morning and every half hour in the evening, and then one trip in the middle of the day. The state legislation for the tourist development tax, the bed tax, for transportation projects requires the overall bed tax to maintain the 60-40 split that Pinellas County already does, with 60% going toward advertising or promotion of staying on the beach to fill the hotels. Hotel owners make up about a third of the Tourist Development Council that ultimately has to go to the county commission for everything that they approve. So, and the transportation piece can only come out of the 40% that's allocated for capital, for infrastructure projects like stadiums. And there is some funding potentially freed up with Tropicana Field being paid off, but as you know, there's a lot of competition for those dollars by Dunedin Blue Jays, Clearwater Aquarium, etc. So, at least Commissioner Welch, when he looked at these numbers, he said this is maybe a little bit of a stretch as far as what percentage he thought they might go for, but he thought it was, it was in range of being potential, so we'll just have to see. One of these projects, either the Jolly Trolley improvements or the airport, both would be a miracle, I think.
Yes, it would.
You want to talk about the other ones?
So the other handout focuses more on Pinellas County's and PSTA's Community Bus Plan Core Network. So we have some powerhouse routes in our system that we have slated for rapid bus services. Some of those would be BRT, where we would talk about dedicated lanes. Others, those would be rapid services, where we work on more technology improvements and limited stop services in order to increase the increase the speeds and decrease the travel times on these core routes that are heavily used in our system. So these figures come out of the community bus plan. They're updated for fiscal year $18, but we take this into the conversation with Forward Pinellas about the long-range transportation plan. So as we start to update the community bus plan and update the long-range transportation plan, the discussion of funding and what is part of the cost feasible plan will start to emerge, and how we prioritize some of these projects and the funding at Forward Pinellas, and what we ask for at Forward Pinellas. Some of this, the discussion at the regional level is fostering of a deeper discussion at the county level about how we move beyond the Central Avenue BRT to our next major capital investment project. So we've taken a look at what we've done in the community bus plan, some of the follow-on studies that Forward Pinellas has completed, and updated some of these routes. We'll continue to update them as we start to get new information back from our travel demand survey on the community bus plan. So you'll see in our 2013 adopted plan, we looked at the entire length of US 19. Now we're looking at the new travel patterns of getting into Gateway. And so these may not be the only funding sources that are available, but the idea of having a discussion about the local option gas tax as a way to kickstart a better bus system in Pinellas County would be our best option for advancing a number of these projects. And within the context of a local option gas tax, we could fund these projects, all of them that are listed, on the operations side, building up to the operations of this entire system. The early years would be spent on corridor studies, advancing through the federal process, and purchasing the capital equipment and the capital construction of some of these projects, with the ultimate goal of having all of them be funded through that local option gas tax. We've left a little space in what the local option gas tax generates versus the entire, and you see that on the back. In 2018, the local 5-cent local option gas tax generates about just over $17 million a year. The operational costs of these 5 projects would be just over $14 million a year. That leaves a little space for a 6th project, or bus replacements, or other things that we might want to put into what that gas tax would fund.
Okay.
I'll just stop talking because I could say more, but just make sure there aren't questions.
Okay.
Okay.
Can we change that word "should be supported by Penny for Pinellas"? That's to could be supported?
Okay.
Okay,
I mean,
yeah.
Yep.
Do we have, oh, sorry, wait.
go ahead.
Do we have priorities among all the different routes here? The Central Avenue BRT is already in play, but the 34th Street BRT, the 4th Street BRT, East Bay 49th BRT, do we have a prioritization?
There's there's a suggested order. There's this little line that weaves through.
So
So they're kind of like
So
in
that's
order.
Well,
indicative
of-
no,
okay.
I would say that I think that prioritization conversation should come in the discussion of the funding and
Okay.
in LRTP.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is because this also makes an assumption about the split of that gas tax. So currently, gas tax is split with cities, and I think that would have to be a conversation about how we change that split in the 5 cents, or how we maximize the dollars within that split. So we have some really good financial partners in the city of St. Petersburg, and they've put money into the Central Avenue BRT. Maybe they would like to prioritize either 4th Street or 34th Street as which one that they would like to see first, and how they contribute to the advancement of their project, I think, would be critical to the discussion of prioritization. Whoever comes to the table with money gets to go first.
Right.
How about that? That was a summary of what I just said.
And the split on the US 19, of course, the city of St. Petersburg has been clamoring for the South 34th Street being the next project. And Ford Pinellas, some of the northern communities are advocate for the green one, the North US
Right.
19.
Well, I just,
But it's
I
who
was
brings the
in
money.
a meeting yesterday, where the mayor of St. Pete Beach is still arguing that they don't want to pay for the
$1.5 million.
portion of that, and so
Give them
he's
good
saying,
news, because
put
we're not
the-
going to charge them 1.5
Yeah,
million.
he just says, put it on 4th Street, you know, he'd rather have that, so. It's, everybody's got their own opinion on how this is gonna go, and that's why I asked if we have a specific a specific prioritization schedule.
Well, we always knew that the Central Avenue BRT would be our best shot at the capital investment grant program.
Yeah.
Because it is the highest ridership corridor in our system. We have so many layered services in that corridor that it is the best to compete. And I think we would go that route as well with the next one.
Any other questions, comments about this?
Let's do them all.
Ambitious, yes. Exciting. All right, modern transit campaign results, Cindy.
Good morning. I am Cindy Rasmussen-Schmidt, your Director of Communications and Marketing. This morning, I'm going to give you all an update about the Modern Transit Campaign. So as you recall, we are working on reaching out and sharing our message with non-riders. So today I'm just going to give you a little update, what that campaign was, where it ran, how many impressions it got, and what our pre and post survey has shown about that campaign. So, the Modern Transit ad campaign specifically targeted non-riders so that we could share our message of innovation and our importance to the community with the people who contribute to PSTA but don't necessarily use it. It's this little cool little funnel, if you all remember this from some of the earlier presentations, talking about how we're touching the public and building awareness. And we're starting in this top little section right up here, the top of the funnel, with awareness, where we're bringing attention and trying to add brand name recognition to the public. So our campaign ran on a number of platforms. We did a 30-second commercial. It ran on cable in the local market in Pinellas County. We also did some specifically targeted digital advertising, so specific apps you might have on your phone that have ads on them. If you are within that targeted demographic, you might see a PSTA ad pop up. And then, of course, we had the beautiful bus wraps. We have 2 buses wrapped with that Ricky Watts artwork that was on one of the buildings down in the Central Avenue corridor. Here's some images of what those ads looked like. At the bottom, of course, is the beautiful bus ad. On the top right is some examples of the digitals that you may have seen in an app. And then the top left there is a Facebook ad, a social media campaign, where if you clicked on it, it would actually show the commercial. So we should have this queued up. Rachel's just going to click it so it'll play for us.
When is a bus more than just... When is a bus
more
than just a bus? When it's an innovator, a trailblazer, a wireless hotspot, and a simplifier. PSTA drives Pinellas and its economic engine with innovative partnerships, programs, and services that are setting the bar nationwide. Take a new look at public transit in Pinellas. Explore modern transit at psta.net.
I get so excited again every time I see that commercial. It came out so wonderful.
Now I gotta figure out how to get the other thing.
Oh, just,
So we don't need, right?
yeah, you can just close that.
St. Petersburg is one of Florida's
I
great
can't see
downtowns.
without my glasses,
And
I'm
an urban
sorry.
environment. We have a grid system, we have fences.
This is a great new video that we ran a few weeks ago about the environmental, economic impact of public transit. If you want to watch that one too. There we go. Excellent. So that's a sampling of what the ads looked like, just so that you recall. Now I'm going to share with you the impressions, what our goals were and what we met. So an impression, as far as this campaign is concerned, means somebody saw it. So if you saw it one time on your app, that's one impression. If you saw the bus drive by, that's one impression. So you can see the split out here. Our goal was to reach 18 million impressions total across this 3-month campaign. It ran January, February, and March. We actually hit almost 20 million impressions. So we had even more exposure than we had anticipated. To break down some of these numbers for you, this first column was the number of adults 18 or older in the market that we wanted to specifically reach, and that's how we get to that 18 million target number up here. In the end, our overall adults 18 and plus was 19.8 million. So you can see the split across the different channels here: cable, digital, paid social, and transit. Of course, transit, you see the bus. You get the whole story when you see the TV ad, or you click on the digital ad and watch that commercial and get more information. But you have lots of exposure by these 2 buses running around Pinellas County. Now this column here, you'll see some of these numbers look the same. This is the adults 25 to 54 impressions, and you'll see it's a breakdown. These 2, digital and paid social, are the same, because digital and paid social, we were targeting that 25 to 54 specifically, and that's what we ended up reaching. So we were trying to get 286,000 paid social. We were specifically targeting 25 to 54, so that's what we got. And so total, you can see the breakdown of the 20 million impressions was 12.5 that hit right in the target. You're always going to get extra people that see it that aren't specifically in your target demographic. So this last column shows you the percentage of people that we reached in Pinellas County statistically. So we reached 80% of the people living in Pinellas County with the bus ads. All right, so next up, I want to talk to you about the study that we did. We did surveying before the ads ran. I think that was done in December. They did some surveying. Then the ads ran for 3 months. And then at the conclusion of the campaign, we ran follow-up ads. Josh is here with me in the back of the room from Study Hall. He is the company that was subcontracted to provide this study information. So if we have questions at the end, he can jump in and help answer some of those. Specifically, we did it in 2 waves, as I said, before and after. All times they were asked the same 7 questions. And we specifically were targeting that non-rider 25 to 54 age demographic. Okay, so when we look at these numbers, here's what the numbers mean. 1 is a strongly disagree, a 5 is strongly agree. Any of the scores that we see that are 4 and above are complete agreement. Like, absolutely, I agree with that 100%. Anything 3.6 to 3.9 are trending towards agreement, a little on the north side of neutral. So those are all good numbers. So what do the numbers show? The numbers show us here wave 1 scores for several perceptions of PSTA, things like using advanced transit technology such as mobile payments, using real-time bus tracking, being a valuable partner in the community. Those are the scores you can see here. In wave 2, you can see the green boxes all went up. And these are, generally speaking, they're all very good, but the green boxes specifically, if you recall from the ad, those are the innovative messages that we were trying to convey in the ad. So we're very pleased that these numbers went up. A couple of numbers went down. Josh informs us that at such a small number, it's pretty statistically insignificant that they went down. The numbers are all still very good scores to begin with. Now, interestingly, what happened was, after they answered the questions in wave 2, they were shown the ad again, specifically in that survey moment, and then asked the questions again. So, you can see here, after watching the video, the perceptions jumped immensely. So what this tells us is that the message in the ad is effective, and if more people, let me get to my summary, if more people saw the ad, it would move that perception needle even more. So we only did a 3-month run. We had a variety of things. The ad's still out on the buses. Those 2 buses, we'll leave them out there as long as we can. And if we had the opportunity to do more with this messaging, it could move the needle in the positive direction even more. So with that, I would love to take any questions or comments.
I've seen the bus, but I wonder, you know, we do sort of a random, as I understand it, we do sort of a random assignment of buses. We don't put the same bus on the same route on a regular basis. So how do we know that the bus that has the logo on the side was strategically identified as being important to hit all the routes, as opposed to just certain routes on a repeated basis?
The buses were assigned to specific routes. A few years ago, they restriped the parking lot out back and changed the way they assigned buses. It used to be a random assignment, and now they have bus to route assignments, so they can pick which routes they're on. I'm not sure if these 2 particular buses rotated in the fleet or not. I'm not sure if they stayed on for the entire 3 months, but there is a possibility moving forward that those buses, based on their mileage, might be moved to a different route, and then we might hit some other areas. But we did target high ridership routes, which is, of course, where there's lots of traffic also, so we know there were lots of cars out there seeing them.
Okay.
Yes.
So there was a pre-video test and a post-video test.
Yes.
Was the same methodology used for any of the other methods for impressions, right? Here's your test score before you see a bus. Now you see the bus. What is your test score afterwards?
Not on the bus, no. The only thing we were
Or any of the other platforms.
Any of the other methods, the only way we were able to test those was was showing them the TV commercial.
Okay. So at the end of the day, it's clear that the commercial itself was effective.
Yes.
What's not necessarily as clear is whether seeing the bus drive by was effective in changing perceptions.
Well, the one survey was done of.
But it includes everything, right? So there was some, but it's hard to know exactly what was driving a change in perception across all those different
between
methods.
wave 1 and 2. Yes.
Yeah,
Josh
so
said yes.
So that's
Come on up, Josh.
Yeah, so that's correct. So when we see wave 2 with some jumps indicated by those green boxes, we can't pinpoint if it was online. We can't pinpoint if it's TV spot radio, if it was just someone word of mouth saying, hey, I saw a bus and it brought me to this website. In future studies, if that is necessary, we could have written in something about where does your perception come from? What have you seen around town? Have you seen the commercial? All we can infer from this point is that there was some sort of organic lift in the scores, and we can attribute that to something has changed in the market, meaning you went out there and showed 20 million impressions. So that's how we can attribute back that some part of the campaign did make an impact. What you're seeing on this post video, even if they didn't see the video, what it's showing you is that, you can go back to that first slide you were on with the post video. What this is basically showing is an evaluation of the ad. If this were to go to a larger audience, does it meet, or does it get this point across? And it does.
Well, and that's clear, and I appreciated that analysis and being able to judge afterward. What I don't know is if any of the funds or effort being spent on those other methods now are as effective or possibly even detracting from an otherwise positive perception.
Essentially, you're looking to see if we move forward with a media plan, where should we put more value?
Right.
Or more
Instead of doing all,
Yep.
Unless all are equally as effective, then where does the resources go to?
Yeah, so that type of evaluation of campaign spend was not part of the original project. It was just to see if there was going to be any lift from the beginning of the campaign to when it ended. and then also if the creative was actually serving its purpose. And what I've told your offices and told the ad agency who you've partnered with on this is that if these numbers weren't positive, we would have had a very different meeting than we're having here today, and it would be talking about, here's where you need to improve, here's the different messages that need to go into the ad. So as far as the ad agency is concerned, the creative that they've come up with, this green box here, this shows that if you do somehow internally decide where to put your funding for future endeavors, the messages that you have in this ad campaign will work.
Right.
Interestingly, too, in the paid social, so it's like in your Facebook where you see those ads come up, and sometimes I call it a carousel. There'll be 3 images that you can slide through. Partway through the campaign, they realized that they were showing the video, actively showing the video as the first carousel, and they weren't hitting the impression numbers. People weren't engaging with it where they wanted. So they stopped that, reevaluated, and redistributed it as a still photo, and then had the video farther in the carousel, and it immediately increased. So they were watching that, the impressions of that all along in that digital and that social space to make sure they were getting positive movement. Interesting little, I didn't have that in there, but that was an interesting fact.
Well, and it's those sorts of differences that I think are important as we start to look at how campaigns unfold over time.
Yes.
And trying to find the message is good, and that's what
Right.
this shows. But
Mhm.
it's making sure it gets in front of the right people at the right time.
Well, and I think it's important to have a mix of media, and you're going to be exposed to it in multiple places, not just one. So having a good mix is great, and then figuring out which are the best, where you put your money is something we can look at in the future.
I do like the idea of in future adding a question of how did you attain your impression?
Yeah,
Where
what was the
does it
basis
come
for
from?
your scores here today?
Right.
Yeah.
You rated it positively, how did you come up with that? And give a
If you
list of
rated it
your
negatively, how did it come?
Yeah,
up with
exactly. Yep.
Right, yeah, that's a great point. We'll include that in the future.
I would think it's important to have the visual from the video be replicated on the bus, so you're making that connection that this is
Yes,
the same thing.
Right, the same.
yes, absolutely.
And that's a type of thing too, as far as, we were more focused for this study on the actual messaging, to make sure that gets across. Future penetration testing, awareness, recall, perception, all things like that, you can test a variety of different things. Like, where have you seen this image before? And just so you know, in order to get access to this study, we did a upfront process where they were potential respondents in Pinellas County were asked a series of questions to make sure that they were appropriate to take the study. And one of the ways that we did that was we showed a variety of images and asked them, what do you see around Pinellas County most often? And they had to have clicked a PSTA bus to get access to the survey. So there was some understanding. So in the future, you can see how you could show the wrapped bus instead of the traditional PSTA non-wrapped version of it, and try to gain some lift that way if you did want to track true impressions or true recall of a wrapped bus with a potential marketing campaign wrapped on it.
Yeah.
So this was of non-riders, but we still wanted to make sure that there was an initial PSTA impression. Is that what I'm hearing by what you just said?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so what we did was non-riders were, the original sample goal for this was, I believe, 100 responses, just based on budget that was provided. We went ahead and surveyed, in addition to that, even though these are very small sample sizes we're talking about here, it's just purely directional, just for evaluation purposes. But we did survey some riders just to see if there were any differences, stark differences in opinions between people that are riders versus non-riders, and there wasn't. So as far as awareness of PSTA, when we look at just the 100 people that we set out there to get, those people all could identify PSTA. Only, I think it took us, I think we only had to disqualify 15 people for choosing things like Curtis Hickson Park or Plymouth Rock up in Plymouth, Massachusetts, where I'm from.
Okay.
So yeah, we weeded out people that weren't 100% certain what PSTA was. So they had a baseline knowledge of that, I've seen this bus before.
Okay.
So aware non-riders would be the way we would phrase that.
Yeah, and I was just and I appreciate the explanation. I was wondering if we were, excluding sub-aware non-riders, like but I don't know if there's any way to parse that out. And I just wanted to make sure that
in future studies there is a way, but for this study it was more important to accurately reflect especially in wave one, because we didn't show a video in wave one. That was before the campaign even ran. We didn't have a video in the survey. We wanted to make sure someone at least had basic knowledge of a visual recall of the bus. Otherwise, these numbers might be a little bit skewed towards, not saying it's going to skew the data, but it's better going in for a baseline of people
At least know we have a
at a
bus.
basic level can recall some aspect of
Like a
PSTA.
enormous hurdle to differentiate between a blue PSTA bus and Plymouth Rock. I mean,
Or a water taxi.
I don't know, I've never seen Plymouth Rock, so I can't tell you.
well, which one you clicked on?
Yeah, so the reason that's important is because with studies like this, we have to put an option. We have to basically have a response category for all potential respondents, and those include not applicable. So if we were to do a study with people that may not be aware of PSTA, we're going to get a lot of not applicable responses, which means your total sample, although, yeah, you're going to go out and get 120 people to respond, you're only going to have valid responses from a percentage of those people. We can talk stats all day. Let's go.
I don't know if everyone has the tolerance for that. So.
Well, thank you all so much for supporting the campaign, and I appreciate your attention.
Very good.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, future meeting subjects.
Well, I believe, although I looked on it, I don't see it on there. I think the next meeting, which again, I wish you the best of luck. I will be at the Tourist Development Council meeting, presenting the page. So Cassandra will be leading you, but actually I think Debbie and Mike will be leading you mostly because we'll be talking about the FY19 budget. This is the planning committee, because the budget is a future-looking plan for how we're going to spend our money next year. Gets the first look at the components in our FY19 budget. The folks on the finance committee always ask me why they don't get to see it, but it's because it's the future.
Until it's the president.
Until it's the president. Exactly. But, so I think that'll be the main item on your agenda next month.
Okay. Do we have any other business? No. This meeting is adjourned.
All right.
It's gonna be less. Well, we're gonna, because they're gonna reduce the, well, it'll be a net. Less because we're going to reduce their payment for the central other trolley. Because we're gonna reduce the service from central other trolley down to the docks. So it'll run every 20 minutes or 35 minutes. And that stretch along the whole part.
So some of the BRTs are turning around and going back to CP, and some are just going to.
Some of the trolleys.
Okay, so.
The BRT will run every 15 minutes to the Don Bazaar.
Yes.
And then the underlying trolley will not run. Just on that.
Okay, so the trolley money that was allocated there is shifting over
To the BRT.
side.
Yeah. And then on the capital components, we have had some positive discussions with both the Don Bazaar and Trade Winds that they would put in some funding, and then any additional capital funding may be zero. We have proposed that we would be willing to spread that over a period of 10 years.